present to us the 90-day plan.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
A little more space on the left.
Hi.
I've seen some of your right.
I know.
And now Chili.
But thank you.
Yep.
And then there's another team over here. Okay.
You got the floor.
Okay. In 10 minutes, right?
Yep.
About 10.
Okay. About? Just about.
Give or take.
Okay. I want to say, first of all, I'm Tina Case, and thank you to the board for making me one of your finalists and having me back. And I do want to say thank you to all of the audience and acknowledging everyone who's that interested in who your next student is. So it's nice to see everybody. And then I just handed all of you a booklet so that you can, it'll follow along with the presentation. It didn't make enough for everybody, I apologize. Yeah. So, I want to start a little bit with my passions and values, just because so you can get to know me a little bit more. So this is a picture of our son, us with our son, who's graduating from the Naval Academy this year in just a few weeks. We're very excited for him. That's my brother and his family, so family is super important to me. We also, my husband and I, enjoy a lot of the outdoors, fitness, bike, hike, and then you'll see that's my door at work, and I believe in reading and literacy, and that's the books I've read so far just this year in 2023. So super important that I get that opportunity, because people walk up, they start talking about what's on your door, and we've shared books. I've shared books with students and with staff, so that's very fun. And then I put community support on there. I'm very big into our district being able to connect with our different communities, our different organizations across the community. One of those, we just had a health fair last year, and we had 14 or 15 organizations that participated in that, and we've continued some of those relationships in other ways throughout the school. So I feel it's really good for our kids to connect, as well as our staff, to what's out there. In Genesee County, we've had a lot of opportunities, so it's been nice. So this is an overview of my plan. I have 3 phases to this: introduction to the leader, listen and learn, the summarize, analyze, and plan, and then there'll be an ongoing phase for the strategic planning. So I'll go into more detail in these. To begin with the plan, there's 6 overarching goals that I see are important for us. The first being to develop the trust and strengthen relationships with all stakeholders, including board members, teaching staff, it may be our paras, whoever we need to meet with. It includes all stakeholders. And the next would be to learn about the district. Being new here, I have what we're doing now, but also the history to learn. So to know, what are the norms, what do we value here, what are some of the initiatives that have been done in the past, as well as what are we doing currently? What are the finance issues, priorities? Then we want to look at gaining a deeper understanding of the district's capacity, the strengths, what we see as areas of opportunities, where can we grow? So that's important to me to learn. Understanding the current status of each building, so getting to know that administrator and actually spending time looking at student achievement. What do we see in our district that is working really well in this building and maybe not something that we're doing enough of in another building? One of the other key goals here is collaborating with our stakeholders. We need to collaborate so that we can build goals off of that. We need to look at how to strengthen the climate and culture of our district. That's always a must anywhere you are at. And then continue moving us forward. If we don't have the collaboration, it would be very difficult to move anything forward. The next part is to work with Midland County ESA and get to know the other superintendents so that I can start working, building relationships with them and sharing ideas. Phase 1 would be introduction to the leader. So it's putting that name with the face with the name, as people say. So we would do these meet and greets with internal and external stakeholders. So it's not just about staff in the building and students, but also our community organizations that are out there. And I would hope to start this in June, so that way I can meet before people start going, school's out and everybody's on vacation. And so if I could do meet and greets and visit the schools, get into some classrooms just to see what's going on and get the heartbeat of what's happening here. School visits, then I would also do introductory newsletters so that those can be sent out. I would like to do a Q&A video, and I saw that there's some media classes that would be fun to do it with the students. Community publications that need to go out. Social media, I see reuse some social media. How is that used? How do I get integrated into that as part of what I am and people knowing who I am? This is also the visibility at district events and community events. So if I have the opportunity to go to band concerts before school's out or sporting events, that's something that my husband and I have done all along anyway, so it would just be just a normal way to get to meet more people. He actually knows students at our middle school and high school and elementary as well, so, and he's always about shaking hands, see if they have a good handshake. So these are opportunities for us, even as a family, to meet other families. I think that's important for us to get to know people. Phase 2 would be the listening and learning. So here's where the heart of the work starts to happen. We would do this in July and August. These stakeholder groups could be one-on-one meetings, for example, with a board member, our union president, so individual. They could also be team or group meetings that happen as we're going through, learning about, maybe transportation group would like to meet with me, our paras would like to meet, we have civic organizations, so that runs into our community groups and also our parent groups. We have band boosters, athletic boosters, so however I can start to meet and talk to people about Meridian. And I would also want to send out a survey to families to get their input. It's really hard to meet with every individual family, so if we could send a survey out and start getting their responses and then go with each administrator through their facility. I do believe that that's super important in understanding what they're proud of, what they're concerned about. I need to start building that relationship with the leader of each building. Taking a district transportation tour, I found this so helpful before. What are the boundaries for Meridian? Where do our students live? What's our community like? And I found that to be super helpful in just understanding where our students are coming from every day. Also connecting with the superintendent, so I would continue to do that as part of it. So the listening is for me to listen and learn. Now, to help guide those conversations, I find it easy to have some questions to start, so it becomes more organic as the conversation goes. When you're first meeting someone, this can give us some guiding questions. To ask them simple things like, what are your 3 points of pride here at Meridian? We should all have something we're proud of where we work or where we go to school. So to ask those questions of our families just as much. How do we celebrate that? What are the 2 biggest challenges facing the district? What are people's concerns? What are some of the areas of opportunity that we should start exploring? People have ideas out there, they just don't always speak about them. And so we need to start figuring that out together. What should I know about the district and the community? Again, that's the history. What would you like me to know about being here at Meridian? What's important to you? And I always think we don't ask enough, where do you hope to see our district in 5 years? For our students too. What do you hope for your student? What do you dream for them to happen? We don't ask that enough to get to know people. The last would be phase 3, and that's the summarizing, analyzing, and planning. And this would happen in August and September. So I have all of this information. I need to put it together so that it's tangible. We can start looking at it. For me, I want to do that on my own first, so I can start saying, these are trends I'm seeing, these are questions that I have. Then I would want to do that dig with administrators. They may be able to answer some of those questions already. They may have questions themselves when they look at the data. I think that's so important to do that collaboratively. And then start setting, or come to the board, sorry, Dave walked back there, so I just noticed him. So we also want to then present that to the board and say, these are the ideas and the trends coming out. We need that support from you, so how do we make that happen? To start moving forward, setting up meetings, meeting with those key stakeholders, and developing the strategy so that we can move forward. The ongoing then is, we have all this data, what's our plan? We need to start looking at that plan and create our goals from that. Which stakeholders need to be involved to do that? What's the short-term actions that we can put under those goals that give us some timelines? We need to start setting those for ourselves. And then how do we progress monitor that to know we're meeting it? We say that to teachers all the time. Are you progress monitoring? How are you holding yourself accountable to that and the kids? We need to hold ourselves accountable as a team and myself as a leader. So there might be times where we have to be flexible, we have to look at those timelines, adjustments need to be made, but we need to report back to the board, this is where we're headed, this is what we're doing, this is the progress we're making, and it should be exciting. The other piece to that, by fall, our students will have had their first fall benchmark assessments that they're doing. So if we're using our MTSS as we should, the multi-tiered system of support, we should be able to align that then with how we're looking at, that's working with what students need. What interventions in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 are we doing? So we can start using the data to align with that. In closing, it's all about building relationships and trust to start us off. Super important. That helps set the foundation for me to be able to lead and serve our district as it's needed. I want to promote that positive culture. It's hard when you go through something tough. We need to bring that back. And that happens, you want people to wake up and say, I can't wait to go to work today. You want students to say, I love school and I want to be here every day. So we have to build that culture. And it's about me listening, learning, and leading. I'm doing the listening and learning from that, and it will help me be the best leader I can be for Meridian. And we get to the collaboration. Collaboration is so important. Without that, none of this can happen. We have to work as a team. And that's something that I've built where I'm at. We believe in that fully as an admin team. I would carry that here. So if you look at that, all of these actions in the plan allow me to build a roadmap for strategic planning and partnerships needed in the months and the years to come that I will be here. What questions might you have for me on that? Got really quiet now.
Did you have anything, that you would maybe reflect back on the first interview that you might have thought you missed, or?
I don't feel that way. One was sharing more about me. I do think that question where you said, what do you do for self-improvement? And I was like, well, I do a lot of things, but it was like not a question I expected. And I did put that on my values and passions in there. I wanted to add more about who I am so that you could get to know me a little bit better. And I think we have this hour to do that, or I heard longer.
So we're gonna ask questions. At this point, we'll be rotating around.
Okay.
Like we did last time. And Dennis is the first one.
What challenges does a subgroup with a high level of poverty and absenteeism pose for a district? And what is your approach to lift all students?
Well, that's a good question to start with right there. We deal with that, I think, even post-COVID, the attendance issue has heightened for many districts, and so we're working diligently with truancy on that piece. We're also trying to figure out how to engage our kids so they do want to be there. So we're looking at our instruction for part of that, and we do have high poverty where I currently work, and we do deal with transportation issues because school of choice. And so we have some parents that don't bring their kids in right away, things like that. So we try to work with individual families and see what's going on and making adjustments so that we can be flexible. So it's the incentive of what are we doing to make kids want to be here. That's super important. I'm reading a book on student engagement right now actually, and talking about what are your lessons like that make kids want to be there every day. And I actually run a group right now, and I don't know if anybody that you talked to had information on that, but we run a student group, and they're all a little bit struggling in different ways. When we had our issues in the fall, we banned phones. So they were protesting in our gym, and there were probably about 40 kids, and I said, well, what do you want to do? Because this isn't working, nobody's talking yet. I said, if you want to stay and have a conversation, we can do that. And so about 20 of them stayed, and that was our restorative practice. I put that into place and did that with the kids. And now we meet once a month, we need to meet more, and they call themselves the Bridge Group because they want to bridge relationships within the building, not with just students, but with the staff. And so we talk about that, and some of these issues have come up about, why aren't you here for first hour? You know, and I'm finding a lot about our kids' families that it's hard. So I think part of it is looking at on case by case basis and seeing what we can do to help. So,
My turn. What would your typical administrative staff meeting look like?
I like to meet where it's almost more like a PD. I don't wanna waste people's time with things that could be emailed. The administrators have so much, I was a principal before, there's so much going on. And so it's really about like looking at data. If we need to look at data and decide, you know, what we're doing right, we do a data dig on our socio-emotional information, we do a WIS survey, and we have NWA every time. So that's definitely how we spend our time. I meet with principals once a month, one-on-one, so if they have issues that's really pertains to their building and what they're trying to work through, we can do it then, so it's not taking up an admin meeting time where everybody's time is needed. So I think that we look at what are the issues we all need to cover, and is it a learning? Sometimes I might have an article that I want everybody to read beforehand so we can talk about that, and maybe something that pertains to instruction or behavior. So I think it just depends on what the topic is, but it is something where I look at and I value their time.
What would you say are the main jobs of a superintendent?
Probably pretty much anything that's needed at the moment. I do think that there's an instructional leadership that's important. If you're not modeling the expectation, it's hard for people to understand why you're there. So I think that modeling the expectation of what we want, instructionally being fiscally sound and responsible and understanding the inner workings of what our budgets are. I think that having a sense of HR issues and how you're dealing with that, there's things that happen unexpectedly. So, but I think it's also like building that, I want people to know that my door is open. If you've got something going on and we need to work on the principal with that and really understand and sit down, and maybe it is kind of an HR, we just had a teacher go out on FMLA for a family issue, you know, and so we sat down and worked out what that person needed. So I think it's multifaceted in everything that have I experienced every single piece that I would do? Probably not, because there's always so much. I do not know how to drive a bus though, okay, that would be out. But I have heard that happening before. But I think it's just what it needs in looking at it and knowing that every day may look a little different too, of what you have going on, what meetings, what the needs are. So I think it's being flexible too.
Please give an example of how you've either collectively or collaboratively bargained an employee contract, and what was your philosophy on bargaining?
I've actually had, that's a good question. That was something you didn't ask last time, and I thought, oh, I didn't say anything about that, so maybe that was something I should have added, but thank you for asking. As a teacher, I was on the bargaining team, and then I became an administrator in that district, so then I was the only one in their history who's been on both sides of the bargaining table on that. So we did a collaborative approach in that district, so that was really helpful in learning. We took issues on monthly as they happened, so that way when you came to the actual contract year, you weren't trying to fix everything, because you've been fixing things as you go. So that was really nice collaborative approach, and actually that same group, when I moved to a different district, they asked me to come back as facilitator. So I thought that was very nice, and you know, offered to do that, but I said I can't, it's too much time. I was starting this job that I have right now, and I said I can't do that. And then with our current district, I've sat down with our superintendent. We just had bargaining last summer for the contract, and so I sat down with that. It wasn't as collaborative, so I've been in it both ways, where it was more, you bring yours, we'll bring ours. I prefer the collaborative approach. I think more can get done, especially if you're working on issues as the school year goes on. I think it's more successful. But so I have had experience on both ways, on both sides.
Understanding as leaders we perform collaboratively and acknowledge
acknowledge that we cannot be successful without our teams. I would like your response to the following question to be uncharacteristically I-centered. Please share an innovative practice that you introduced in your recent past, the practice, the outcome with special focus on student outcomes.
Innovative practice from the past. We did, this is I-centered, this is so awkward, right? So I did training in cultures of thinking. Actually, maybe I have that book here. I brought some of my books, yeah. So making thinking visible, and I did training under Ron Richard here, who also worked with Mark Church, but also has done some work with John Hattie for the educators in the room who may be familiar with those names. And so the cultures of thinking were great ways to make thinking visible, as the title says. It's pretty clear. And they're easy strategies that you can incorporate in your classroom. So I actually was doing it in staff meetings with teachers, and then they started asking me, what is that? So I had their curiosity, and then I'm like, who'd like to do a book study after school? And so we were doing a lot of it. It became a we, but I started with an I, and I started with the teachers, because I'm not in the classroom to say you need to go do this or let me come do this. And so the teachers, it was so much fun to see how they were using these strategies in their classroom after we would do them. I would do them with them, or to them, I guess. Is that a two when you do that? In teaching them engagement strategies that way. And when they feel it and they experience it, they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. So we had a lot of staff using that, and it was definitely visible in the classroom.
How would you cultivate relationships with students that foster respect, confidence, and trust in leadership of our schools?
I can use my group as an example. When they started protesting, they wanted someone to listen. And that's part of it right there, is listening. And if they feel that you're listening, you gain that respect, you know. And I didn't change the policy. There's still no phones at our high school. You know, I couldn't change that, and I explained that to them. I actually said you have to go to the board, you know, if you guys want. So they were able to, and they say that now. We just met last week, and they said, you know, you don't have all the same issues as I do, like, and we're all from different communities, because our school choice is larger there. And it was so funny to hear them say, because some of them are not always behaviorally the best students, as I found out later, that's fine. You know, they enjoy coming there because they said someone's actually listening to us. And I'm trying to teach them the skills at the same time, so when they go back out there, they're building the relationships too. We talked a lot just this last week about how you feel when you're upset and how you deal with that feeling. Because it's okay to be mad, it's how we act upon that. You know, so we're talking a lot about that. So I think that that's part of it, is building their confidence and skill set while listening to them. And as a counselor, that was part of what I did as a high school counselor too. I mean, building relationships is, I enjoy seeing kids who, I'm the curriculum director. A lot of people don't really understand what my job is even. And I can go through the hallways and people say, you know, kids are like, hey, Mrs. Case, I just literally, this is no joke, had a student stop me the other day. He goes, I'm reading a book. I said, oh, really? What are you reading? And we talked for a minute about it because I've been on him. I'm like, I think during COVID, a lot of kids stopped reading. And so I've known him since he was in 4th grade, you know, and so then he stops me to tell me he's reading a book. So, you know, and that's just fun. That's how you build relationships.
Okay. How have you addressed the achievement gap, and tell us about challenges and progress you made while achieving it?
I think that my biggest win was as a principal, and we had a literacy issue, as many districts do. And we started, actually, teachers have been trained in another strategy, and we started doing these, and we started digging into the data. It was a 7-8 building, and people, you know, we realized that we have kids at 4th grade reading. And it was eye-opening, you know, that teachers, they never really looked at that. So we started digging in. We had a universal screener, but then we dug in and did a separate assessment on kids and found out, like, they still didn't have the phonemic awareness. They still didn't understand how to So then they couldn't cognitively put all of that together because they didn't understand the meaning of the words they were trying to put together. So when we worked as a team on this, it was amazing. I had a beautiful staff in that sense, that everybody's like, okay, what do we need to do? Because at first it's like, well, why didn't they fix that at elementary? Well, some of it's so hard. They are trying, you know? I'm like, no, they're here. They're here. Let's look at this. And we worked so hard on common strategies that we could all use. And they started differentiating the reading level of things like articles in the class, which that was before Newsella. If you're familiar with Newsella, that's brilliant, you know? So kids could get the same article, but it's at a 3rd grade, a 4th grade, a 5th grade level for them. So everybody can talk about the same topic because they can all read about it. And so I had teachers searching for different articles and things, you know, at different levels. And we worked really hard. And that was when they used to do the top to bottom list. And when that came out, another administrator called me. He said, "Did you see your school?" And I'm like, "No, I mean, I'll do that later," or whatever. We had moved up, I wanna say it was like 49 to 62nd in 1 year. That's huge. Like, we celebrated. I mean, and that was the work of all their efforts together. And so then as we were doing this work, I said, I know this is a lot of work doing these screeners, and they were scoring the data themselves so that we could put it all in this Google spreadsheet because there was no data warehouse then. And I said, how do you guys want to do that? They're like, no, we want to keep doing this. And that's when you know you've built a culture. Like when your staff says, let's do this. So that's probably one of my proudest moments as an administrator, to celebrate that with them and to show our kids, you guys are rocking it out.
Yeah. What is the purpose of the school?
The purpose depends on the kid. I'm gonna honestly say that. We're here to educate them, but sometimes this is the safest place for a kid. And they come here because they need a hug and they need someone to tell them that they matter. So I think that that's also, there's a social-emotional purpose, there's an academic purpose. There's kids come every day because they are involved in a sport. So we're here to teach them so many, I see trust, respect, responsibility up there in the back wall. I mean, we're here to teach them all of that, but it's about the unity, it's about the collaboration, it's about the involvement. If they don't know how to be involved, I'm really scared for them when they go out to that next level, if they don't know how to communicate with people. So I think, we have kids every day who come because this is the only place they get food. You know, so I think to say, what is the purpose? It's so many things for so many different kids. And so we have to think about that. That was eye-opening to me in the district I'm in now. When we have a snow day, our kids don't eat. You know, and that's just like when we had those cold days and it was 5 days in a row, I sent out an email. Remember on Monday, some kids may not be in a good mood because they haven't ate well for the last week. Please be kind. You know, so we have to remember those things. So I think the purpose is, you know, in the end, we want them to be citizens who contribute to the world, you know, in society. We want them to be successful. But at the moment, their purpose may be different, and we have to meet them there and figure it out.
What will be your relationship with your athletic director?
I hope a good one. I'm a pretty proud supporter of athletics. My kid that you saw up there, he was okay, I guess I'll take the mom brag moment. He was a state wrestler. He qualified for states in wrestling all 4 years he was there. So we were very proud of him. And so I want kids, like I said, that's what draws some kids to be here every day. They get to go to football practice or track practice. So I would want that to be a good relationship, because there are times that we had the last year graduation and state track meet were on the same day. So let's talk about flexibility and figuring something out, you know, and we did a special ceremony for the kids who were there because we couldn't change either date. There were too many parents who were like, I've got people coming out of town and stuff, but, you know, so we worked together. I love our AD where we're at now. He just started last year, I think, and he also teaches elementary PE. So he sees kids at both buildings and he helps recruit kids actually for the sport. So I want kids to want to join, but if they're not interested in athletics, I hope they're doing something else. I always said as a counselor, especially to new students, join something, whether it's a club, the theater, sports, something. But I do believe, your athletic director's heard the heart of what's going on in the district all the time.
Can I follow that a little bit? So just disgruntled parent really having a problem with the coach or something, goes to the athletic director, what happens then?
I hope that the athletic director sits down and talks to them before it would come to me. It's like, as a principal, I would often ask the parent, have you talked to the teacher yet? I think that's where the conversation should start, because it wasn't there. But if it's something that's very serious matter, I wanna be informed. I wanna know what's going on, and if I'm needed there to help mediate, by all means, that's what we do, because we need to figure this out. And I'm not saying anybody would be, I always think, sometimes, you know, nobody's exactly right, but the answer's somewhere in the middle there, you know, of how to make this happen and what's best. I think we have to stop and say what's best for the student quite often. And we get too involved in all of the other things and forget about, this is really about a student in this situation. And I know, like, the first time a kid gets cut from a team can be heartbreaking. I was, as a middle school principal, first time kid doesn't make something, you know? So, I mean, I took phone calls like that, but I would say, have you talked to the coach about it, what the student needs to be working on, because that's where you need to start. So I would hope that we build that kind of communication, and I know, my brother's been a coach. I mean, I've been involved in athletics a long time, not as an athlete, please. But, and I, you know, he always said as a coach, he would tell the kids, if you want to know more about what you're doing and why you're not getting the playing time, talk to me. Your parents shouldn't be coming to me, you should. And it was high school. You know, but I think that's important, and kids need to learn how to advocate for themselves. That's so important that we teach them that skill. That's one thing